Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kim. I'm Chief Security Officer at City Network, so that's a title you should run away from whenever they offer it to you. I'm a very techie guy who's no longer allowed to do any techie stuff, so that's something. Well, I'm here a bit because actually I'm not about to talk to you about security. I'm here to talk to you about OpenStack, and recently visited the new summit and the new release of OpenStack. How many here has heard of OpenStack, are familiar with OpenStack? Okay, that's good enough. So I just want to gauge the where to start. I've been to some conferences where you need to start, this is a hypervisor, and there's others where they ask, what type of libvirt are you running? So it can be different bit. OpenStack started as a open source project in a small scale. NASA and Rackspace figured that we want some way of having a united way with APIs to manage and orchestrate virtual machines, regardless of hypervisor. I think this is part of the thing why OpenStack is so immensely successful, is that they never ever built a hypervisor. So they were never in direct competition with VMware, with Hyper-V, with Xen, or with KVM. You can run that vendor independent. And that's pretty amazing in this OpenStack Summit when you see all four of them standing together and joining together and say, OpenStack is nice. That's something you don't really see with vendors that often. They usually try to annoy each other if they can. Simple enough. Why shouldn't we have similar APIs to run compute, networking, and storage? OpenStack is set by a lot of projects for running this. You have the project that's called Nova. That's the basic one. That's the compute one. Pretty much all installations of OpenStack has some type of Nova. This is the one who manages the hypervisor instead, who runs the virtual machines. A lot of people usually install just Nova or some storage. You can install Swift storage and use that as a basic storage solution without having a hypervisor. So a few usually just use Swift and Swift alone. That's interesting enough as a storage solution for a resilient storage. You have Cinder as a storage. You have the image service, Glance. You don't use Glance without the Nova module because that's pretty useless to have an image library and not a hypervisor. But anyway, you see here that they have started to show the maturity of projects, the adoption rate. So people who want to use OpenStack can actually determine a bit, is this module something I can invest my time in an operational sense? Is this ready for being in full production, or is it a test and development environment pretty much that it should be used in still? The thing with this release was that for the first time ever, Nova was not the one module with the most activity. The most activity was in Neutron. When they asked during the keynote which of the projects, they all answered CloudKitty. That's a project for documentation. So no, it was not CloudKitty that had the most activity. Neutron has the most activity. And why? I usually say that in a couple of years, we will see a lot of Neutron deployments without Nova. Why? Earlier, you had the hypervisors, and you only cared about hypervisors, and you used networking the old-fashioned way with patch cables in a switch. And you had a hardware switch standing right next to it. That's the old-fashioned way of handling things. Neutron actually makes it possible now to go more and more for software-defined networking. Why should you not be able to share infrastructure when it comes to networking? The same way you can share and provide infrastructure today when it comes to computing, when it comes to storage. You can have one hardware where a lot of customers, a lot of VMs share the infrastructure, you can overcommit that because you don't use it at the same time. Why not the networking? Because of the vendors. That was the biggest news during this summit. The big switch vendors, Cisco, Juniper, HP, we're all standing there and say OpenStack is the APIs we're going to use. OpenStack will be the solution for software defined networking that's vendor agnostic. Imagine the thing is, I have a very good broadband connection in my home. I don't use it right now because right now I'm in Stockholm. I would happily try and resell to earn some extra money or lower my cost, my broadband connection at home. Because I pay a lot of premium for it, but I don't use it during some periods of time during the day. I still want to use it when I need to when I'm at home, but why not fear? Why not be able to commit it outside? This is an extremely interesting area. And what's most amazing is that this project has gotten a lot of commitment from big vendors. The huge ones are committed to making this work. That's why I actually think OpenStack is one of the few open source projects where big, huge vendors and big commercial interests actually can agree on a set of APIs. And that's, yeah, rare. But good. We need that. Because to tell you the truth, regardless on what type of firewall you're using, you basically fulfill the same needs within a firewall regardless of vendor. Why shouldn't there be a unified APIs so firewalls can talk to each other in the same language? Okay, bit other from news, you can see a bit more about the maturity, the level. You see, heat is taking a good hold and increasing a lot. Heat is the orchestration, the automation networking. And this is, well, this makes sense. Because if you can do something across a lot of data centers, across a lot of nodes, regardless of what type of infrastructure you're running on, it makes sense that you want to do it not by calling APIs as well. You want to automate it, of course. So heat is interesting. The thing is, the combination with heat and these management tools like Puppet, Ansible, SaltStack, Chef. How many here are using some of them? Yeah, good. Then you know. The same here. OpenStack has not gone in and tried to compete with them. OpenStack has invited them and say, okay, here's this orchestration APIs. How can we integrate with you? Also a pretty interesting set of APIs, all for automated management. What's interesting next is ironic. That's bare metal. You can have empty machines. You fill them up, you take them away, you fill them up again. NTT Telecom from Japan showed us an interesting scenario where they have 100 racks, all filled with hardware that's empty. And every day they fill them up according to needs, and they take them away at the end of the day. Pretty fun. So you never know what are they used for, what type of machines are they running. That depends on time of day. Something for us that made us a bit disappointed at City, we're hoping a lot for Trove. We want to launch it, but we realized that no, that's probably not a really good idea. So something you can see here from the maturity level that, yeah, okay, wait a bit with that if you're not on the cutting edge and want to test it. But if you want to run it for a huge production, no, actually don't. You only get hurt. Trust us, we're on depending on building for cellumeter, and that's hurtful. It's painful right now. So that's something. Designate is some other interesting thing. A floating URL. Why should it take a long time to change the IP addresses behind a URL? That should be an instant scenario. If you want to scale out, if you want to switch, if you want your application pointing at one URL to switch nation, to switch continent, that should be instant process today. Good initiative. TTLs are crazy. It can take a few hours to switch on all name servers, and that's not sensible with the time and what we expect of things today. And now NetNode will have some issues with this, but
issues with maybe solutions.
yes, absolutely.
Or opinions.
About it. Yes.
Opinions.
They're not short of opinions, so ask them a lot of stuff. But these are a few of the interesting news. What other news from OpenStack? How many here are using containers? Kubernetes or Docker? Okay, a few. You're familiar with containers. How many understand the idea of a container? OpenStack has a huge initiative of running containers. So OpenStack will work together with Amazon to be able to float containers seamlessly from OpenStack deployment to Amazon, to Azure, and back again. This is also very interesting from this perspective that you start to have this big community and vendor independence. Your application, if it's containerized in a Docker or in Kubernetes, can move from Google to Amazon and back again. We made an interesting test with a container where we bought storage from Amazon, we bought computing from Google, and we bought networking from Azure, and it worked. Performance-wise, it's not very good, so I wouldn't recommend it for a production environment. But it actually worked to run a full-scale virtual server and an application where you buy these things independent from different vendors. This is pretty awesome. This is not something I dreamed of when they started the internet in 1995. I mean, it's... So, yeah. No one else excited about it? I think it's cool.
Sorry, we're Swedish.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the Japanese thought it was cool. So.
They're quiet there too, right?
Yeah, they're quiet. So they did. Whoop! And that's good. Okay. Any questions about the modules and stuff you want to know? These are just a few of the important news, but one big trend we saw is that networking providers are more and more interested. We actually think being in touch a bit with the Swedish telcos, I laughed a bit because they're not really this visionary. So I think they will have a few issues when it comes. But what I really liked with OpenStack was that the huge worldwide telco providers like Verizon and Vodafone, they like this idea. So there's hope for it yet. A
comment on that one. The guys going on those conferences talk a lot.
Yeah.
But they don't back it up at all.
No. No.
Be careful about that one.
Yeah, it will be. But it's an interesting idea ahead to see where it will be. The one thing there is that it's not just the switch providers, it's the telcos as well that needs to be involved in some sense in this. And that will be interesting, to say the least. Anyway, anything else more about the different projects? Well, like I said, they have actually launched this project navigator. You see, if you go to OpenStack software and you can see the project navigator, it tells you a lot of the basic maturity, how much activity there is within a project. And that's a really good thing, because the trend with OpenStack now, it started as a development project for pretty much developers only. Now the operators have run and are a lot more than developers. So it's matured enough, so it's a product that's in use. So there are more using OpenStack and running platforms on OpenStack today than are actually developing and making it. That was not true a couple of years ago. So that's also a big trend that's using. So user forums, documentation, this boring stuff are becoming more and more important right now for the OpenStack deployment. So that was also something that they had a huge call to arms, because you should be very careful, because you cannot trust the documentation absolutely. It's an open source project with a lot of involved people, and yeah, documentation is not always absolute. Something we painfully realized after a while as well. So that's a good recommendation.
A question was,
Yes.
if you go around a little bit,
Yeah.
if you look on Ironic, which is the bare metal,
Yeah.
was Intel up and doing the presentation on the rack scale?
Yes, actually they have Intel and Rackspace together.
Rack scale,
Yeah.
the rack scale architecture.
Yes.
They were up.
They were up. Yes.
Okay. Because the only provider, if no one knows it, the only providers of rack scale delivered today, this company sitting in Stockholm,
Yeah.
and they're called Ericsson. They are the only providers. HP is behind, Dell is behind, IBM is not even close, Lenovo is looking. So if you want to buy anything on that side, Ericsson is the only providers.
Yes, and there are, but like I said, the APIs.
Yeah.
Is mostly that there will be, and this is, I think, a good thing if a vendor that's market leading makes the APIs public, then they make it a lot easier for other ones to connect to these APIs. And this is a trend I think is pretty good, because earlier vendors tended to make their own and lock them in, and I think more and more vendors today realize that they can't be locked in, because even if you're a leader, you need to compete not by trying to be unique, so you have to have build your applications uniquely for one vendor. That's not a feasible thing today, because customers will have a mixed environment. You cannot avoid it anymore, and that's, yeah. So even Microsoft is more and more realizing and seeing this trend moving. So yeah, yeah.
Did you hear anything about upgrades to the load balancing service at Neutron?
Yes, actually, there is a big project with that as well. It's called Octavia. We have a load balancing service running version 2 right now. That's in the works. That's what a lot of customers has asked for, because you want load balancing to be able to run on different ports at the same time. So you don't want to build one load balancer for HTTP and one another for HTTPS. You want to have them on the same one. And this is a huge thing. So yes, they're working on it. In the Liberty release, there is a really good working project that trouble with this is it's open source, so there are 3 units competing right now, all developing their own version of load balancing. And we don't really know which one of them has the best one yet. Yeah. That's still to be tested and evaluated. And that's the tricky part. That's why they have this good project now, so you can actually, if you're a mere mortal, not a developer, start to follow and see what are things pointing at and why are it. And that's, yeah, the same with if you have a lot of commitment from different interests, they tend to prioritize different things and they want to solve it in different ways. And they're all welcome to contribute, but it can be a bit messy for other ones who just want to use it to understand which way are they moving. But anyway, the basic function, you want to use more ports on a load balancer. That is assured that they need to solve, so they will do it. It's a bit of a matter of, yeah, which ones. Yeah.
Why is DNS lagging behind?
It's not. It's a young one.
Yeah, but it's the basic function.
Yes, and a very unsexy one. Yeah, no, but sorry, NetNode, but yeah, it's unsexy one amongst developers. That's yeah. What can I say? I try to rally developers for security, and then so I mean, certain things are not as sexy. So yeah.
I have a T-shirt that says the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there are a few, but not the majority. So yeah. And in open source, you are dependent on people wanting to contribute. That's the end of stuff, pretty much. And that's, yeah. Yes.
Is that also the problem with Ceilometer, or is it the problem there that it's mostly backed by vendors of hardware rather than the providers that actually... I mean, I'm always... Ceilometer is, you pointed out, and it's completely weird. 43% adoption, relatively high. It's a painful piece of...
Yeah, Ceilometer is painful because a lot of things change. All the other modules that Ceilometer is supposed to get information from is changing all the time. And they are not very good at integrating and keeping in touch with each other a bit. So that's the big problem with Ceilometer. Ceilometer will always lag behind because the models, different modules are running straight ahead, and Ceilometer will follow a year or two afterwards. Because otherwise they can. It's hard for them to keep up, and that's, I think, the biggest problem with Ceilometer. Yeah. Okay.
The biggest question, of course, when will City Cloud be on Liberty?
Actually, we got this big recommendation. Now my CEO will kill me. But we got this big recommendation that you should not lag behind more than one release, because otherwise you will lag behind too much. So Liberty has just come out. In 6 months, in this 6-month time frame before Mitaka release is out, we should really need to upgrade somewhere in that time frame, because otherwise we will lag behind too much. So that's something, it's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, it's good for us and also good for you.
But that's the big recommendation. That's what we took away from the OpenStack Summit, that if you lag too much behind, you will have a hell of a time. We had a few speakers who actually upgraded from Grizzly to Liberty, and that was not a pain-free exercise. So, yeah, we need to keep up. That's the end of the message. When exactly, we need to plan a bit internally, but we can't lag too much behind. That's all I can say. That's not good either. You will one mistakenly yum upgrade, and then yeah, you will have bit of problem there as well.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I have a question over there.
Yeah. Have you seen anyone use Keystone outside of the typical like OpenStack scenario as more generalized authentication?
Yes, actually, they have a big identity as a service section in the Keystone project, where you provide it as basic logging. This was based on a lot of companies selling Swift as just a Dropbox alternative. You can put a container in Swift. You can put the entire web page in Swift and run it. If it's a static web page, you can use Swift. You don't need a server at all. And this was something they actually had a bit of it. And in order to use Swift, you need Keystone as well, because that's what handles the identity authorities. And you have a project called Manila that's actually file sharing and file rights and read rights to file libraries. And this is also something that's connected to Keystone. So Keystone will start to take a life of its own by being a web-based identity and providing services behind it. Not only just for computing and the old stuff, but for running a direct consumer end service. Yeah, interesting stuff, but we'll see where they take us a bit. But yes, answer to your question. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.